Hey guys, this is Jim, WT1W, and you're watching FEP Labs Radio. Thanks for stopping by. So, week before was Hamcation 2025, and it was awesome. Went down there and hung out with a whole bunch of my friends. Many of you that are watching this video, I got to hang out with and meet. We had a wonderful POTA meetup out at the Lake Wakiwa State Park on Thursday, and then we had 3 glorious days of Hamcation, also known as Nerd Fest to my wife. So while I was down there, I picked up a few things. Didn't really go there with a plan to buy anything. I was kind of looking at a new ICOM dual band radio, but it's not released yet, so didn't get that. And as I'm wandering around the swap flea market area, whatever you want to call it, I came across Kenwood D710A. So this is a 2-meter 440 radio dual band, and it has a remote head. And so you can put the radio body somewhere and then set up the head on your dashboard, similar to how you would set up something more current, like a Yaesu FTM 500, which is also a great radio. Now, the 710 does not do any digital modes like D-Star at all. It does, however, on the 710A come with built-in APRS and an internal TNC. It can also use an external TNC, which is pretty cool. I'm not buying it for any of that. The APRS functionality on it is pretty sweet, but I have APRS on my FTM 500, which is where I normally run it. That may change in the future, but for this, at this point in time, I'm not going to fool with enabling APRS on this unit. And there's a reason for that, and we'll hit that in a second. So let me switch cams and let's take a look at this treasure that I've found that is probably about 15 to 18 years old. Stand by. Okay, so this is the radio, and of course here is the remote head for the radio, and it is dual band. You can have this screen be yellow or green. So I'm kind of going with green on this guy. If we want to change it, of course, we can go in the settings and we can dial that in right there in the aux menu and set our screen color. And again, like I said, we have green and we have amber. So the menu is pretty comprehensive. You can do a pretty much complete front panel programming from this radio. So audio settings, transmit, receive settings, put in memory information, DTMF for using with All-Star or Echolink. This radio is Echolink compatible. Of course, your repeater settings, general settings here under the aux, power on message, screen, what your program keys are, scan times, data bands, data speeds, PC port baud rate. We'll talk more about the comm stuff in a second. Of course, time and what time zone and so on and so forth. Of course, we have a very comprehensive APRS menu we can set up in here. Like I said, there is an internal TNC on this guy, which is cool. This will hook up to an external GPS. So this is kind of why I'm not getting too jazzed about doing APRS on this. While this does APRS, the issue I have with it is that I have to get an external GPS. I have GPS built in my truck. My FTM 500 has a GPS built in. I really don't want to have to buy an external GPS just to do APRS with the GPS piece. So if you have an external GPS, of course, you can get the data in and out of this and set waypoints and so on and so forth and set your beacons. This does smart beaconing. For as old as this radio is, I don't know when they invented smart beaconing, but this radio does support that. And what smart beaconing is, if you don't know, is it'll set your beacons to go out. If you're going 5 miles an hour, you'll beacon every 10 or 15 minutes. If you're going 70 miles an hour, you might beacon every 2 minutes, that kind of thing. So it does all that. Of course, you can set comments for different positions. So you would be able to set something like a "I'm here" when you reach your destination, for example, and a status text and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Of course, you can filter all the messages that you get or don't get over APRS and set your station icon and all the usual APRS things. Sky Command, I have no idea what that is exactly. I believe it's a remote control functionality. I haven't researched it, Haven't messed with it. My Kenwood TS2000 supports it as well. So there's that. Anyway, that's the basic setup in the panel of this thing. And of course you have your two VFOs, and right now they're the same thing. So if I want to switch one of these VFOs, wrong knob, I can bring this over to the YouTuber frequency that we use at Hamfest and stuff. Or I can set this to and this is where it'll stay. This will be my All-Star node in the truck on 433-700. So that's kind of how I'm going to run this, exactly like this. The radio has a lot of very cool features. Again, for a 15, 18, 20-year-old radio, I'm not exactly sure when this radio came out. So it has a nice long cord for the remote head. My one pet peeve is that the microphone has to be connected to this. So I had to get an extension cord for the mic. Not a big deal. This is going to go under my dash or on the console hump to the side of where I sit, mounted there. So it's not like the mic cord is going to have to go a long way. I got about a 2-meter extension cable maybe, and most of that will be coiled up. So I'll be able to have the mic hung on the dashboard where it's accessible. The radio itself is pretty straightforward. That's our control cable there on the front. That's where our mic goes. And then here in the back, and I have this all hooked up right now, we have a COM port. So that's our serial port for talking to the PC. There is CPS from Kenwood available for this radio, which I've been using to program it. You can also get CPS from RT Systems to program this radio. You have to use the RT Systems cable with this radio. For some reason, their software and this serial setup does not work. So I'm not using RT for this. I'm using the Kenwood software, and this is terminated in this oddball DIN connector here, and it goes to a 9-pin connector, which I have a USB to serial adapter plugged in my PC, and that's how this is hooked up. This is the serial connection. This is the audio and mic connection. So if you're using this in a home situation, for example, this will do packet. This will do APRS. This will do FT8. Should do FT8. The other cable is this guy right here, which has your mic and your audio connection right there. And then this end here connects to the radio. So you have audio in and audio out of this radio. So this has as many possible data connections as is possible with a mobile radio. So this is a very cool radio. It is 50 watts on high power, 10 watts on medium power, and 5 watts on low power. We're going to plug it in and get readings on that and double check that here in a minute. And then of course you can also have, these are 2 external speaker jacks on this radio. So for a 15-year-old radio, honestly, short of the GPS, this has just about as many features as you'd find in a brand new dual bander radio. There's one other thing I haven't figured out specifically about this radio, and it's a matter of model numbers. This may do 220 as well, and it may also go from 800 and something up to 1.2 gigahertz. I don't think that's this model. I can't make it switch the bands. So either I'm not hitting the right keystrokes or this model doesn't do it. And the Kenwood documentation is a little ambiguous because this is a TM-D710A, and depending on which version of a TM-D710A you have, it may or may not do that. For me, it doesn't matter anyway. There's no 220 around here, and there's no 1.2 except for a D-Star repeater here in the area. So because this will do 2 speakers, I think it's very possible that I end up putting in an external speaker of some sort and maybe mounting a small external speaker up like on the A post of the truck or something like that. I don't know, we'll see. This is so small compared to the space on my dashboard where my bullet point mount is that I may find a very small external speaker and just mount it up there with the head, or possibly behind it or something like that. I don't know, we'll see how that plays out. The other things that I got with this are in this large box. And of course, this is like the desk mount for it. This piece here, which will screw in, actually goes up inside the radio, like so. And then if I can line it up while I'm trying to look at the computer screen. Of course, if I put it in the right way, it actually works. And then that latches in like so, and that would be fastened to this plate. So you've got some tilt with this thing, and then the plate will be fastened down to whatever. I have a Ford F-150, and the Ford has a bucket, trough, whatever you want to call it, pocket in the middle of the dashboard, and I have the bullet point mount for that, which I showed you guys in a previous video when I mounted the 2800 up there. So I'll just remove that radio, and this plate will get attached to the bullet point mount. This goes to this plate and to the back of the radio, and I'm golden. And since I'm not fooling with GPS, I won't have any other wires except the actual control head cable. And I think that about covers it. I got a few other cables with this radio. So I got this cable, and I'm not entirely sure what this guy is. It's got a very strange little connector on the back of it. Tio and I looked at it. We weren't quite able to figure it out. And then this is a 9-pin. I think this is a connector for a specific kind of GPS or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. I have a factory bag of screws. I have a warranty card and a yellow piece of paper that says don't use this in the bathtub. A spare mounting foot thingy. And then the last thing I got was this cable, which I believe, because this has a bare end on it somewhere, and this would go to a GPS unit. It's a specific kind of data cable, something like that. So not bad. This little score was about $300, I think, $350, something like that. Which, I don't know, for a 15-year-old radio, maybe a little pricey, but if it does what I need it to do, and it has additional features, so down the road, if I decide to bring this in the house and make it a digipeater, I can. This radio also does crossband repeat. This radio also will function as an iGate and a digipeater. So again, there's a lot of functionality in this guy. Really cool. I wanted to show this CPS software here. Again, this is a basic 2-meter radio kind of deal. And the CPS software looks like CPS software. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with the CPS software here at all. It's what you'd expect. You can set your memory channels. There's an upper limit on memory channels of more people than I would ever potentially talk to ever. So that's not a problem. You can set specific call channels here. Every time you click one of those items, it pops up a new specific menu. So I can set call channels. I can set weather channels. We can set scan memories to program. I don't scan. Nothing to scan, no reason to scan. Here are the offsets for the different frequency bands, the receive steps, the transmit frequencies, so on and so forth. And then we have our actual menu items for the functionality of the radio. Let me get rid of some of that. And that is about the base things you'd expect. Beep. If you have the voice unit, which is an add-on module for this thing, you can have it announce when you change channels and APRS calls and all sorts of stuff like that. This particular unit doesn't have the voice unit, so I'm not ever going to mess with that. Transmit and receive settings. And again, everything in here you can also pretty much do from the front panel, like I showed you through the menu. So I don't know, this is easier than sitting there and mashing buttons and turning knobs, I think. And the software's free. You can set your DTMF tones, how that's going to work, DTMF speed, repeater functionality, and you can make it even ID, which I thought was pretty cool. Under the aux menu, this is basic stuff. Data band, data speed, brightness, what color the backlight is, whether you have the partition bar in the center, that little vertical bar between the A VFO and the B VFO, kind of thing. PC port speed. I've had no problem running this at 57,600. The only problem I had was that if you change the speed on the radio and you change the speed in the CPS up there, then what I found out is that you have to turn the radio off and back on again for it to sync up with the new data speed. I had a hard time originally with the comms. It just wasn't working. And so I set it to 9600 and I thought, well, let me go do something else. And I turned the radio off, came back, turned it back on, and lo and behold, it worked. Changed it to 19.2, did the same procedure, worked at 19.2. So once you figure out what speed you're going to handle and what speed your comm hardware can handle, and 57.6 is well doable for any reasonably modern PC, like 5-10-year-old or more. So I've set it at 57.6. Doing the programming at 9600 is like watching grass grow. So that was like a little gotcha with this thing. Again, if you change the speed, you got to power cycle the radio. Other than that, no big deal. You can change the PF keys on the panel as well as on the mic. The mic is a standard sort of deal. Like most mics, it has an A, B, C, and D down the side, and then the number letter keypad on the front, so you can do T9 messaging if you're doing APRS, for example. We can mask out which bands the radio will use. This goes back to the 1.2 gigahertz and the 220 thing. I haven't seen any evidence of this in the particular model of radio I got. For me, doesn't matter anyway. This is all our APRS settings. There are multiple pages of APRS and all the associated things that go with it. We have our Sky command set up, which, again, I don't exactly know what that is and have no burning need to find out at this time. We can set our DTMF memories. So here are 3 all-star nodes that I connect to. Hayden, Honeywood, VK7HH, Jason, KC5HWB, and old Freddie Mac, KD5FMU. So I've got their nodes saved in here. So if I need to reconnect to one or want to connect to one, all I got to do is hit the DTMF memory. We have Echolink memory, not using it. And then data terminal, and this is again for packet stuff and setting all the comm parameters for that. So that is the CPS software. Okay, we are set on low power on 5.2, and I'm transmitting into a 100-watt dummy load over here. So let's see what kind of power this thing has. I am on a 15-watt range, and we're on power on this Nisei meter. Let's key up. And that looks about like 10 watts. Or 5 watts, rather. Let's see, that's on the low scale. Yeah, 5 watts, exactly. I don't know how well. That first number, 5 watts, dead on. Sweet, all right. Now let's change our power here. Again, we're on a 15-watt scale on this bottom white band. And that's 10, well, that's about 11 on that scale. So good, we're getting full 10 watts on medium. Now I've got to change the scale. Let's jump up to the 60-watt scale. And let's hit this guy. There we go. I'm trying to read the power on the screen here. Anyway, all right, now let's key up. And we're on the 60-watt range here, so this should be almost full deflection. And we're looking on the middle white scale is where we're at. Let me hold that up there for you guys to see. And 60 watt or 50 watts. So perfect. This thing's putting out great power. Love it. Love it. Guys, that's all I've got in this video. If you would, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Make sure you share this. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. That way you'll get notified whenever I post any new content. And if you've stuck with me this far, thank you very much. There are links below to join and become a channel member. We do a Zoom call once a month with me and my channel members. And as I'm part of the Coffee and Ham Radio's crew as well, that also gets you into the monthly Coffee and Ham Radio's Zoom call with Temporarily Offline, the Smokin' Ape, and KK6USY Old Chuck. And we have a great time on both of those Zoom calls. So I would appreciate it. You can either join via Patreon or YouTube. Take your pick, whichever works for you. Make sure you ring the bell so you're notified whenever I post any new content. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great day. 73.